Hey everyone, this is Dan. It's nice to welcome everyone on the webinar right now. This is the one that we haven't done in a while. I think the last one was about a year ago. So the topic of the webinar, we essentially will cover three main topics, which are 5 things to recognize immature and high-risk development agency. The second one is lean startup product development to beat the competition, find market fit fast, and succeed. And the third one is how to leverage Web3 and blockchain space for Web2 companies, specifically financial companies, healthcare, hospitality, and essentially our cases of the clients that we're working with currently. We're also live on Zoom, so I will be sharing my screen on Zoom right now and essentially going straight into the presentation that we've prepared. So in the first place, I wanted to start from the quick overview of Antarexi and myself, why I'm qualified to speak on the topic. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Interexy. We're 150 plus engineers, software development agency. We're essentially Web3 mobile consultant agency. We're headquartered in Miami, in Florida, with development offices based in Eastern Europe, in Poland and Estonia. We also have the local presence in Dubai. We essentially have the entity in Dubai, UAE. We're providing Web3 custom blockchain and mobile tech consultant services. We have around 60, I think slightly more than 60 clients at this stage. And we mostly work with companies and startups with the Western Europe, within the Western Europe, the United States, the UAE, Middle East in general, and Australia as well. We have a pretty high success rate for the development agency, for the businesses in our niche. In terms of the growth rate, we are bootstrapped from scratch. We are purely growing from the investments, from reinvesting essentially the profits that we have, and we grow at least 3 times each year that we are on the marketplace. And only last year we helped our clients to fundraise 180 million through the product that we were involved with. So we either build a product from scratch, or we were providing our engineers, our specialists to work on the product, and our clients were able to fundraise this amount essentially. So about myself, I'm an iOS software engineer in the first place. Started as a developer, was working in different agencies, I was doing different iOS products. And I essentially saw from my end that like the way that those agencies were set up, I didn't like that people, they often focus on money in the first place. I didn't like the processes there. I just thought, and I basically knew from my end that things could be done better. They could be done in a more transparent, in a more beneficial and valuable way into the end of the client. And essentially some of the agencies, they were purely development agencies, so they were not like focusing much on the business side of the whole thing. And this is essentially how we are differentiated ourselves on the marketplace and what we thrive for. Not only building the software for the clients, but also taking care of the fact that the software that we build is actually improving their businesses. Right now, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Interexy, 60 custom software development projects, 3x growth each year with zero funding. So it's purely bootstrapped at 25 to 150 million plus fundraised by clients with the product that we help to develop. I'm also a blockchain enthusiast. I'm deep in the niche. I have several crypto related businesses on the side. Blockchain investor, not a successful one, I would say at this stage, but definitely working on it. All right. So the first topic of the webinar of this conference is essentially 5 things to recognize immature and high risk development agencies and save money and time. We essentially divided everything into these building blocks, so the information would be digested a bit easier. And I think after the webinar, after the conference, we will be sharing the presentation with everyone who participated and stayed till the end. So the 5 pillars that we've outlined from our end, by working in the industry, speaking with clients constantly helping clients after they burned out with some other agencies. We know a range of agencies by ourselves, we know the competition, and at the same time we talk a lot with agencies like ours, so we can mutually improve on certain processes and things, and essentially provide more value to the marketplace. So the first thing is communication, then we have the pre-sale process, then we have maturity and immaturity of specialists, then we have delivery process structure, and the discovery stage specifically. I would definitely cover this. And then we have contracts, which is also a pretty important part. And basically the goal of this first part of the webinar is to recognize high risk and immature development agency before you actually spend any money with them. So these topics, everything outlined here, is specifically going to be essentially for the clients, for people who want to develop a software product, so they can figure out if the agency that they're speaking, or if they're like shopping around on the marketplace, if it's immature and high risk, and how to essentially avoid that, and how to understand that like the guys that you're talking to, they know what they're doing. They're not the first year on the marketplace. They won't screw up the project, and they're basically not lying as well in the communication, everything. So the first thing is communication and lack of it. There are some default business principles here, I would say. With engineers, it's often interesting because engineers, we have certain, I would say, direction of communication, since like we're often not like very social, and sometimes you might be able to find like a pretty good engineering team. They might be just like starting out or something, that want to have like a very good communication, but they are like very good engineers. Obviously, you would only be able to check if they're engineers, but I would say it's more like a rarity, because with working on the products, especially on something bigger, where you have like a lot of parties involved, where you have deadlines, where you have investors, where you have marketing teams waiting for the product to get launched and everything. Lack of communication can really be an issue with the development team, lack of transparency, since you won't be able to solve the issues like in the fast manner. You won't be able to solve the issues on the go. So it's very huge risk. Only if you kind of like understand that you are keen on taking this risk, so you can often either pay more, or you can often spend a little bit more of your own time to manage the whole team and to micromanage the whole team. That might be an option, but in general, a lack of communication is a huge damage factor, and the bigger, the more important the project, the larger the factor it is. So the first thing is on time, being on calls on time, being with emails on time, being with everything that they like tell you about on time. And it's essentially connected with the second point of the whole thing, because remember that we're speaking not about the part where the product started already. We're speaking on how to essentially figure out and pick this development agency before you would actually be paying any money from your end. So the second thing is pretty important, is following promises. When someone is telling you, I'll get back to you at the end of the day, I'll send a proposal before 5 p.m. today, it's a very great thing if essentially someone is saying something like that, and if someone essentially complies to the promises that he or she provided from his end. I think if you are in the market for quite some time, if you had some experience, I think you had many cases where you were talking to people and they mentioned, yeah, I will send you a proposal tomorrow. I will send you the proposal by the end of the day and everything. And then you had to follow them up so that they can send you the proposal, or they were like rescheduling the calls and everything. That's might be like a red flag in the first place, but obviously we as people, we kind of collect all the red flags, and then based on this, the amount of red flags and the amount of green flags, and at the end of the day, we're making a decision on whether or not we should be moving forward or not. So following promises in the pre-sale process with like timings and everything is very important thing. It shows if the person has the business intelligence, if he's not in the in the first, like in the business for the first year. And yeah, it's a definitely important thing to take care of. Then professional email communication. There are some engineers who are basically just working on some kind of platforms, or like these are smaller teams, or like they're not native speakers, which is essentially the same thing with myself in the first place. The email should be definitely professional. It should be clear. It should has very good structure. should be logical. It should not have like, it should not be like just like a huge chunk of text. So you need to invest time to figure out what the person actually meant. And it should in total make sense. Like, and you definitely would want to see like a clear signature on the email. And you definitely need to have a feeling that like, I like the way that these companies communicating with me. They're not arrogant. They have nice email. They're professional. They have a signature, and the email is solid. I can even forward the email to my partner, so I can even forward the email to my investors, and all these kind of things. So it's definitely should be professional. Definitely should be on point. Then we have good and clear email structure, easy to digest. The same thing that I mentioned just now. You should really be able to understand. Yeah, it's better if it's like structure in different points, so you can clearly understand like this part, and that part, and you usually won't have any questions. And last but not the least is proper sales process. So some people can essentially be, I would say, not so interested to see the proper sales process implementation. Me, myself, as a business owner, if I'm trying to buy like certain service for the company and I'm getting on the call with someone and I see that the person is not leading the call, they don't hold the frame, they don't answer my questions properly, and they want me to lead despite the fact that I want to buy their service, it just doesn't make sense for me. And I see right away that if they have the immature sales process, then they probably do not provide a lot of value on the marketplace, because they probably did not make like a lot of profits that they can essentially reinvest to improve the value of the product or the service that they are providing. So it's definitely a sign of immature business as it is, and immature business is essentially always a risk. So I really like myself when I'm on the calls with essentially consultants and salespeople from other agencies, not only development agencies, but like marketing agencies, for example. I can really see a solid sales process. I can see that everything is being done to the book. Everything is like straightforward, transparent. It's correct. I can sometimes like throw some objections just personally, just to see how the salesperson essentially handles them. And if this is a good specialist, I understand from my end that the company can afford a nice, a nice specialist salesperson they can train. And that essentially means that probably they have everything on the delivery side figured out as well. So it definitely essentially adds more confidence for me. And as I think that's something that you should definitely be aware of as well. Obviously, there are some cases, especially with the engineers, where you won't be facing something like this, and in some cases, it might be like a benefit if you want to get someone cheaper, but who still might be like working nicely. But again, it's a very, very rare situation. And I would say, like from the business point of view, with like larger budgets and everything for serious companies, it's usually like a red flag, and it's usually high risk when you're essentially talking with someone who is a provider and they don't have a proper like structured and sales process, and you basically don't see from your end that like the person that calls you have done these type of calls like a couple thousand times already. Then we're moving forward to the pre-sale process. So it's everything about like the estimations, everything about figuring out the requirements of the product, everything about providing you with the like case studies, the relevant ones, the portfolio, personalizing the process to you. And it's something what you enter once you are at like deeper stages of the discussion of the project. So it's not basically just the intro, you're already actively speaking about the project with the provider. So in the first place, which is important, is personalized and customized. You should see and you should understand that the pre-sale process of the company is really personalized and customized to your exact request. If you want to like disrupt the market with like very good like UI and UX, if you really care about how the testing is going to be done, if scalability issues are very important to you, since you're planning to essentially spend huge marketing budgets and get a bunch of users on the product right away, the company, the provider that you are talking to, they should be able to customize and personalize the pre-sale process in order to essentially provide all the necessary information for you. And this is very, very important. Like often you would see some kind of like general pre-sale process, and like sometime like you want to develop a mobile application, but you see that like pre-sale process of the company, the case studies and the portfolio, they are often like just talking about web stuff. And you ask like, do you guys do mobile applications? And they say, yeah, it's like we're definitely doing them and everything. It often might be a red flag, because in the pre-sale process, the team should have a range of developed documents with the overview of the processes, with the presentations of the processes, with the presentation of the expertise in your industry, usually with the case studies similar to something that you want to develop. The more information that the team would provide to you, the better would essentially be, since it essentially adds like the highest level of trust and highest level of confidence. So yeah, this is the second point that I've mentioned already. Relevant case studies also mentioned about that. That's pretty important. They also should have them on the website, since often companies, they would just white label and they would just send the case studies of some team that they are outsourcing to, which also often a risk. Good presentation structure, presentation skills. It also shows that like people you're talking to, they're not for the first day on the marketplace. They have the information prepared, and the only reason of why they should have presentation skills, good presentation skills, is that it would show that they've been doing it for some time. They were proven on it. They know what are they doing. So they've done it a lot. They've done a bunch of projects already, which obviously decreases the business risk and risk of the product being unsuccessful from the development point of view. Then we have maturity and immaturity of specialists you're talking to. That's something that you can screen on the like personal level, on soft skills level. How confident is the person that you're talking to, how they really believe in the service of the company, how they believe in themselves. And it would often tell a lot, since as humans, we essentially take and understand a lot of information from the body language of the person that we're talking to. And it's a very important and interesting thing to essentially focus on. So the people that you're talking to, they should be confident, they should be professional, so they should behave, look, and implement stuff as professionals as well, not arrogant, ready to consult and help. So they should not like be looking down on you because like you don't understand some like technical stuff or things like that. They should not be trying to essentially lie to you, since they understand that like you don't understand these things and they can take advantage of you. That's definitely not something that is essentially interesting when speaking with like any development providers. And then they should definitely be proficient in the topic, or at least willing to learn. So at least willing to learn, that's also a high risk. But essentially, you always, like as a business person, you always considering the risks and reward and the money, the amount of money that you essentially investing into the whole relationship with the provider. So it essentially depends on the task, and it depends on the various variables that you have on your end. Professional in the topic, it's very interesting in Web3 space, in blockchain as well. You should, like when you're speaking with consultants, with like engineers on the end of the provider, they should really be keen and interested in the topic of the product. It's like I won't say it's a necessary thing to have, since like essentially with each like custom software development project, you can always divide things into very, very small pieces, and then be able to essentially be able to build them from scratch, even if engineers, they don't know the industry very well. But it's definitely a plus. And speaking of the blockchain and Web3, you should definitely be talking with the engineers who are very, very keen on the space. They know a lot of projects, they know how the whole thing works, they own crypto by themselves, they're investing and all those kind of things. Then the delivery process structure and discovery stage. So there are a range of companies on the market who would be jumping on the development of the product right away and just like providing you with like estimate and committing to the estimate just when they're talking to you before you actually spend something. And it's a huge red flag, actually. It often would show that the company is not mature enough in their processes, because essentially any company can be able to provide you with the final and fixed price estimate and commit to it after like 4 hours of calls or something. They need to do the like thorough investigation of the product. They need to understand all of the functionalities. They need to understand how the whole thing works, and they need to understand what you essentially want to achieve with the product. And if they don't have like a discovery or software specification development process internally inside the company, that would often show that, it's just probably like a small team, or if it's like a larger company, they don't have like these processes internally. So they basically don't know how to work with the type of the product that you would like to build. So with the technical specification development and the discovery process stage, you should definitely have like the business analysts, designers, and solutions architect and project managers on the end of the provider. So they would really be able to jump deep into the product. So they would really be able to understand what are the things that you actually want to have done, and what essentially, and they need to be able to consult you on different functionalities, different features, essentially in connection with your target, with the product, with the budgets, with the timelines, with the market that you're going into, with the competition that you might have at this stage of the development of the product. So it's really a range of things to take care of on this product. Fixed priced, it's a red flag for custom projects often. If it's a fixed price that's cheap, like if we're speaking about like if you're talking to some type of an agency which has done something similar to what you want to do, they have a name in the field, and they're offering something for like a higher price than everyone else who is offering the same thing to you. Like, let's say like you're getting quotes 150K, 200K, 250K, and all these companies, they're agile. And then you have this one player who is providing you the estimate of 1 million and 1.5 million. They might actually know better what are they doing, and they might be able to essentially commit to the time frames with that type of budgets and really develop the best product in comparison to all of the companies. But in general, I would say that it's very, very rare case. It's something that serves better for like larger brands, like Fortune 500 companies and people like that. Essentially, with like smaller custom software development projects where we're speaking about under 1 million budget for the development, fixed price is always red flag, because it's a massive project, it's months of development, it's a huge team, and they would either lowball themselves and not deliver the whole thing at all, and they were not planning to deliver the whole thing at all in the first place, or they will make like a lot of profits and essentially overcharge and overprice the whole thing. So definitely something to focus your attention on as well. And then essentially contracts, I think it's last but not least in the first part of the webinar, the fifth point. So contract is something that is pretty interesting and pretty important as well. Often from the contract, from the type of the contract that the company sent to you, you can understand if this is something that just was developed, that just was downloaded from rocketlawyer.com. And if it's just something like quick, and if it basically not suits very well to your type of project or to your market or to your industry, being in the niche and being in the industry as a business owner, you would often understand what type of contract you're using, maybe with other providers, or what type of contracts like your competition or your partners have with the providers in the niche. So you would often see and understand if the company that you are working with is mature enough to work with you, since usually it's better to have companies as providers who are essentially slightly smaller than you, but not too much, since if they're very, very small, you would often end up in this situation when they just don't have internal processes to manage larger projects. They don't know how to work with the companies like yours. And yeah, it's also high risk, and it also usually would end up not in a very favorable situation, I would say. Non-general from the web mentioned, suits your business size and other vendors mentioned, suits your location and jurisdiction mentioned, no mistakes or issues made. Yeah, that's a huge point. The provider you're talking to should have a proper legal department on the end. If it's like CEO of the company who is changing some things on the contract and everything, depending on your size, obviously, but yeah, usually like larger, more mature companies. And if the company is mature, it's obviously a lower risk to work with the company. So they definitely should have like legal people on their end that are professional, that know what they do, and that don't make mistakes on the contracts with the invoices or different terms. All right, so this was the first part of the webinar. Then we're going to the second one, which is lean startup product development to beat competition, find market fit fast, and succeed. And we'll have three main points, which are consultant agencies versus development agencies, how to be agile, how to be lean in the best interest of the product, and why fixed price doesn't work anymore. So I can say that like the main sum up of this point is essentially about the book Lean Startup, which I think any software product owner should definitely read, and it's like a Bible in the development of the software product. But I will essentially cover this topic from the point of view of the provider, from the point of view of Interexy, and share some experience in terms of what we see, what works, what's not, what are the products. Like we had clients who were able to reach 400 million valuation in 1 year and exit from the company. So like crazy success stories. And we also have like some people who were not like very focused on the product. They didn't figure out things with the market and everything, and they didn't really succeed with something that they were working on. So we'll start with the consulting agencies versus development agencies. Consulting is about advice, professionalism, product-focused approach, providing business value, caring about the solution, and being upfront about functionalities, issues, and improvements. So development is about doing what was told to do, often if it's not that required for the product and is not in the best benefit of the client's business. Often it's about shifting responsibility, lying about expertise and our promising and not delivering. So I would say consultant agency is an evolution of development agency, since I think everyone just starts with the development agency in the first place, and then if they want to go that route, if they want to go to the route of essentially adding more and more value to the businesses of the clients that they're talking to, that they're working with, they would be moving forward in the consulting direction. So essentially, it's about like minor things, minor changes in the process that over time frame of the mutual work on the product, they improve the end quality of the product by a lot. And like you can really compare the same product, one being developed in consulting agency, one being developed with development agency, with no like other involvement from any other team. They will have way different quality at the launch. They will have way different chance to find market fit. And with the consulting, with the products developed with consulting agencies, you would often go through several iterations based on the feedback of the like from the marketplace, even before you launch. So usually with consulting agencies, you would have people, you will have members of the team that would essentially consult you on each part of the product development. And you would even see that during like the sales process and during the pre-sale process as well. These people would essentially be constantly providing you with the idea. They would be asking questions on why essentially you want to develop something like this, and what kind of things you're trying to achieve, what kind of market you're essentially going into, what kind of competition do you have, because they're thinking more from the business point of view. It's not something that is coming just from pure development. Therefore, they add in way more value to the product by itself, since it's basically not just about delivering functionalities and kind of leaving all the heavy lifting to you. So you you would do everything from the product ownership to you. It's constant consulting from the design, from the UI, UX point of view, from the business analysis point of view, from the engineering point of view, from the QA point of view, from the project manager point of view. It's constant feedback in terms of the improvements and what could be done with the product to essentially make it better. One of the things that we're doing inside our agency to essentially improve the quality of the product that we are launching once it's done is we're almost pushing our clients to essentially let the product see the potential users who would essentially be using the product during the development stage, and often even during the design stage. So we ask them and we push them, like, launch some ads. We have this version of the product, have some people essentially check out the product, provide the feedback, launch the ads into your target audience already. And then we will work on this feedback. We would include this feedback into the backlog when we're planning development sprints. And we would effectively iterate on the feedback, and we would ask the client to do this thing once in a while, basically. And what happens on the time frame, especially if it's like if we have like several months to essentially develop the MVP, it would the product by itself, it would be way it will have a way higher quality once it's essentially launched, and it will have way higher chance to find a market fit and essentially be successful in the marketplace. Because in any case, after the launch, once you would be getting more and more feedback from the audience, from the market, you would be iterating and improving on the product and adding new functionalities. And a very interesting and important thing is everything that we think that the product needs in terms of the functionalities and features before they launch, before we actually get the feedback from the marketplace, is assumptions. And these assumptions, they need to be validated. And me personally, I've seen a range of different products fail because they just were too complex. They had they had a range of functionalities that MVP didn't need for sure. And this is the type of work that was specifically done with the development agencies, just basically building functionalities and building as much of the functionalities as they can, so they can actually bill more hours and charge more. This is exactly that business model. In our case, we focus on the business value of the product. We focus on the features. We often charge more as development agencies, but from the value and from the business value of the product, from the product value of the whole thing, it's way higher at the launch, at the end of this first part of the engagement. Then how to be agile, how to be lean in the best interest of the product, iterations, gathering feedback during development process, work on feedback and improve, implement best practices from the market, and knowing clearly whom you're going after and how, and communicating it to the development team. So agile is a huge word with lean product development, and currently in the startup space overall. You can be fixed, you can be immutable on the marketplace right now. The whole thing is changing too fast, and you always need to get feedback from the audience, from the potential users of the product, and you always need to iterate on that. So you can have like a general focus. You can figure out something that you see leverage on the marketplace in. Quick and this example is improvement of the user experience within Web3 products. Because with most of the Web3 products, user experience is just awful at this stage. So it's a nice leverage to have with the product when you're working on something in Web3. But overall, you can have this main thing as a focus and then just iterate on all the functionalities constantly based on the feedback from the marketplace, but obviously sustaining the main idea, the main concept, the main value that the product is providing to the audience, since there are also a range of stories where products were developed for years, constantly being iterated on via like Scrum, via Agile, and they never seen the launch. And the main issue with that is you should not be afraid to launch the product if it's like clunky or something. Obviously, if you don't have like huge marketing budgets and you want to spend them right away. But even if you do, it often makes sense to just launch the version that you have right now, because you would be able to fix the things quick and you'll be able to continue. And like when you're constantly holding the launch away of the product and you're constantly thinking that, yeah, let me like work on it a bit more, get some more feedback and everything, you should, with any product development, you should basically set a straight deadline on when is the launch and basically launch it anyway, despite the status of the product at that time, and basically just iterated work on that. That's essentially what Microsoft do, that the business model. Work on feedback and improve, implement best practices from the market, huge point as well. And yeah, knowing clearly who you're going after, and it's a very important thing from the market research point of view. With fintech products, for example, like you can't afford to have like some kind of bugs or some issues there, because if you launch fintech products where like fintech application, for example, but when you have the connection of the credit card of the users and the bank details, if they see some issues, if they see that the product is buggy or clunky or it just like not very well done, they would be afraid that the information can be stolen. Since if the product is not very well done, there is a huge chance that there are some issues with the security and the whole thing as well. And you should also be able to communicate that with the development team, and essentially the development team should be able to ask that in the first place, because it's a very, very important point from the user experience point of view. Like for different like age groups, for different essentially target groups, for different like professions or something, there should be a different user experience on the product that you're essentially working on. So this is something that the development team should be asking you about for sure. Then we have why fixed price doesn't work anymore. And I would say it's more to the connection of startups. It might work in some cases with these like urgent builds for like very, very custom, in cases where people were like Fortune 500 companies, they just don't care about the budgets and they need the thing to be done quickly. But in general, with startups, fixed and immutable is death. And when you are fixed with the functionalities, when you're not working with the market feedback, and when the development process is like at least 3 months, so it's not like something very, very small. It's like it's a proper MVP that you're actually planning to launch. You've been planning it for like quite some time already. You definitely need to have an option to change fast. You need to be willing to change the concept, and you often would need to be up to do pivots with like the solution that you're working on, because every business has pivots and it's essentially the part of the process, and you can't be like very, very fixed with something that you're working on. So that was the end of the part 2. Then we have part 3, which is how to leverage Web3 and blockchain space for Web2 companies, financial companies, fintech, financial services, healthcare, hospitality, plus the cases of our company. So application of Web3 space and use cases, security, payments, decentralization, tokens, benefits, and why and where it should be used. So speaking of the blockchain and Web3, the main thing is obviously the decentralization, which allows for very, very interesting concepts in terms of the security and in terms of the exchanging of the information and exchange of value, basically. Information is obviously value as well. And the first thing is decentralization, that essentially allows for everything like that. So the pure implementation of like most famous cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, essentially like a store of value where you can send money to anyone that you would like. It would not have a very, very huge commission. And the pretty important point is that's about zero trust system, where you don't have a middleman to handle certain transactions. And we've been working, we had discussions on a range of healthcare products in different countries, even like the products that were connected to governmental systems of storing health data. And they're constantly thinking on implementing private blockchain solutions, or essentially at least a decentralization part of the whole thing. So they would remove the human error from the equation, be able to build a more secure and stable system, and be able to essentially transfer the information quick and easy and a secure way, and also be able to add the mix of smart contracts there to essentially be able to work with certain transactions, removing the middleman completely from the whole thing. Then obviously the automation, this whole concept of DAOs, and if you would check out the case of Decentraland company, where essentially the CEO left the company and he left the rule of the company to the DAO, so essentially a decentralized organization with basically just investors into the platform and active members on the platform, and like they're working as one on making the decisions on funding and development team and all these kind of things. So they're basically managing like the business, and they're managing the company. And there are a range of tools, range of platforms that are getting investments right as we speak, who improve the user experience and who automate how the DAOs essentially work. They automate the management of the DAO for people who are in the management of these organizations. And it's essentially a huge thing for Web3 space, because like there are some things developed already, but now like the user experience of the whole thing, it needs to be improved. And the whole thing needs to get a bit more automation. So the work is like it's a simple example with like Binance and Trust Wallet as well. Essentially, when you're on any exchange, you have USDTs from different blockchains. Like you have USDTs from ETH, from Binance. You have USDTs from Tron, for example. And if you're doing the operations on like your own wallet, you would often need to like find some kind of exchange between like the two blockchains and transfer the value to the one, and essentially exchange. And then yeah, it's essentially very, very tough and hard operation to do. Like it's not hard, it just takes a lot of time. And exchange, for example, it does the sequence like that for the user. So it just simplifies and streamlines the whole thing, since it's just how the technology was built, but it's definitely the part that with enough trust could be essentially delivered by the third party. Then we have investment opportunity and product growth, which is it's a pretty interesting point that Web3 products, they open up investment opportunities into startups, into tech startups, not only for like private investors and private part on the market, but for the public investors as well. And with that product, you won't have to like go on the IPO. You won't have to have this like minimal valuations in order to be able to jump on the IPO and everything. You would be able to gather their funds to fund the development at the pretty early stages of the process. And with NFTs, NFT means like many people, they essentially use NFT means many projects, many companies to fund the whole development of the project as well. Obviously, since like the process is simplified and there is no middleman, it's not regulated well at this stage, there are some people who are trying to take advantage of this whole situation, basically just fundraise and leave with the funds. So I think this part would be regulated over time. But with everything else, it just simplifies the access of capital. So people who want to build, they really can build. I don't think that this situation would last for long. I think it's specific to the current condition of the market, but it's pretty interesting thing to leverage at this stage. DAO structure, Decentraland, already talked about this example, and many more. Yeah, like with everything that's being done currently, and with the range of products who essentially leverage Web2 space, or even like very, very old systems in terms of how people used to do business in certain industries. And you basically can see how the whole thing is changing with the implementation of Web3. It's essentially crazy of how much leverage and how simple those systems can become with the simplification of the whole thing. Like one of them is obviously real estate, with the tokenization of real estate and fractionalization of ownership through the NFTs. And yeah, it just simplifies the whole process way more. How to actually generate new revenue streams for your business through blockchain, not losing money on it. So yeah, there are essentially a range of Web2 businesses, especially the ones who have anything connected with the tech, specifically security, some kind of middleman issues, some kind of things where you basically want your customers to be able to have a bit more control over the activity, so they can be a bit more involved, and they can essentially generate more value for yourself, and so you can increase the retention rates. And if you would essentially see all the top companies out there, it's ecosystems. So like Facebook and Google and others, they built ecosystems that allowed other companies and other individuals essentially create value in those ecosystems, like Amazon as well. And like with Web3 and with the transition in Web3, you can easily develop an ecosystem. You can easily integrate ecosystem within the current business, where you basically have like any type of the customer base. It's essentially it's not a very easy process, I would say, but it's definitely a straightforward process, and with the right hands that essentially can do that. It's definitely something that could be managed, and is basically the creation of the ecosystem. So users will be able to make something for themselves when communicating with you and your product and your company. You would be able to still make something from it, and obviously it's a larger reach of the whole thing. There are some issues with the management of cryptocurrency and the inflation, everything. And if you know about all of these play to earn titles at the moment, they didn't figure out the inflation within the tokens, and most of the tokens, they just go to zero once crypto guilds figure out how to abuse the games and how to make the most of them. But in very, very well structured system, you can allow for creativity, you can allow for providing value to your customers, to people close to a network, to partners, and at the same time essentially have more for yourself, so you can even grow the ecosystem, build new products and improve and iterate on that as well. So the main thing on how to essentially approach the process of moving to Web3 with the Web2 type of business with the Web2 company. I have 5 steps here, simple ones. Planned with experts, well thought, working with someone who has done it before, working with someone who understands it clearly, and iterate fast and move fast. So planned with experts, obviously it starts with the heavy consultations on what essentially could be done, especially if you've seen competitors in your niche essentially doing that, and you're on the edge currently thinking oh, I want to leverage this as well, but I don't know how. I know about all these people who made a lot of money, but I also know about all these people who lost a lot of money essentially. So the first thing is, it definitely needs to be done with the experts who understand the niche and who understand how the whole Web3 and blockchain space essentially works. Not from the technical point of view only, however, this part is very, very important, but from the business, investments, community point of view, so they can essentially suggest and advise on how to manage the whole thing to actually sustain something that would get developed. The second thing is well thought. So yeah, it's essentially the same type of work with the experts. Everything should be outlined as a plan on paper, clear, and you should be notified about any potential risks with the transition, or with the additional product, always with the integration to your planning for your Web2 company. This third thing is working with someone who's done it before, a huge thing as well. I think it's connected with the point one a lot. Working with someone who understands it clearly. This point is more about understanding the type of business that you are running, and often having experience with the same type of businesses, or essentially working on something like this and doing something similar already. That adds a lot of value into the communication, and it removes a lot of risks as well, because people like the company, they're not learning based on something that you would like to do. They're basically implementing the skills that they have already. It often will cost more, but from the end value, from the end product, it definitely make way more sense than basically just working with someone who's like second day in the whole thing. Iterate fast and move fast. Crypto space is very fast at this stage. So like these products, these teams, they work like nonstop. They work on the weekends. It's a very, very like talented team of engineers, talented teams of marketers, and like there are a range of people who are like really early adopters, and they're like thriving for the niche, and like they're doing everything to expand the blockchain and Web3 space. And yeah, I think like one of the most hardworking people on the planet right now, they're in Web3 and in the blockchain space. And it definitely adds a lot of pressure. So you would probably want to work with at least the same type of people, with the same type of provider who would be able to sustain and who would be able to support. Or you can kind of counter it with the experience and expertise at the same time. But it's definitely hard to find on the marketplace as well, since this whole space is still pretty new in terms of the development and everything. So there are not like a very, very huge amount of talent on the marketplace for something like this at the moment as well. Then we're going to Interexy use cases: healthcare, security, membership, financial services, and customs. So with the healthcare, I've spoke about several of them already. Mainly those are connected with the security systems to essentially improve the security and remove human error, because human error in healthcare is very, very costly, not only in money, but also in people's lives. To essentially be able to install decentralization, remove the middleman, remove human error through smart contracts, and essentially build the systems that just, I would say, kind of work by themselves and kind of operate by themselves. So engineers, they can iterate on them and improve on them. Security is essentially the same thing. Everything about like cybersecurity companies, who like financial companies essentially as well, that need a very, very high level of security on the platforms. It might be like the implementation of the custom token with a range of nodes to essentially work with the transactions that are happening on this custom chain, which is like private and which is within the company. And it's also actually pretty interesting for enterprises, with like documentations and stuff, and essentially for a range of industries, because security capabilities of blockchain and implementation of the technology, they're essentially huge in terms of how well you can secure the whole thing. The issue is that you often would need like a lot of nodes be running in the system to be able to support something like that. But there are some things that you can essentially do and implement to solve that as well. Membership, it's huge with NFTs. So the whole purpose of NFT is obviously prove the ownership of some asset to the market by a certain individual or basically the company. And with membership, you see a lot of companies and you see a lot of startups and you see a lot of like private like clubs and everything implemented NFTs as the membership cards. And with NFTs, since it's essentially a software product, you can code a lot of interesting things and you can code a lot of gamification inside like these whole systems. So I think it's definitely going to be huge for the games, like these play to earn things. I think from the like economy point of view, we're only like seeing first steps with the titles and with the products that are being developed at this stage. But yeah, I still have a vision that like in several decades from now, there would be basically people working inside the games and doing nothing else. It's basically just doing it full time. And obviously with different clubs, with like any place where you have membership, or you have like a proof of doing something, like for example sport awards, they could be in the way of NFTs. Even like with ownership of like buildings of real estate, you can like tokenize the whole thing and make NFTs out of them. And there are a bunch of improvements in terms of the implementation or something like that. So essentially a range of things that you can work on within NFTs, and a range of things that we see ourselves being implemented in the range of companies. I'm not going too deep on this part because obviously most of the stuff is under NDA. So I'm just giving like a general overview of something that everyone who's in the niche would essentially know and understand. So with the for financial services, many people say that like blockchain and Web3 is the future of banking. I'm not sure if we would replace the current system directly. We obviously have the case of El Salvador, and I think if the currencies would not be so like so quick to change in the price, it definitely would be a way stablest solution, I would say, that would attract a lot of like larger players into the game. But even at this stage, like just the option to be able to send money to anyone in any part of the world and they can cash out like just right away through a range of services that provide these type of functionalities is just crazy. Like the issues that you might face with the bank sending money, even like from one continent to another, you would have like a range of banks moving money like from one bank to another, and you have commissions, you have middlemen, you might have some issues. The bank can suspect a fraud, so you would need like to call, to hustle and everything. And yeah, with the implementation of Web3 and blockchain, it's not only about the exchange of value, it's about the additional functionalities that could be developed, since obviously it's a software product and obviously it's connected. It's something that's connected with the like we basically have like smart contracts as functions and development languages connected with the currency. So it's a very it's definitely a future of fintech in terms of the implementations and everything. And custom, so here I basically meant that you often have the functionality to develop like any type of custom token for any type of project, any type of platform, and everything that's digital, that has a middleman or some type of issues that could be solved within security or like zero trust systems and everything. These could be implemented, and there are still a range of businesses that use middleman in terms of how they operate. Like there is a decentralized version of Uber, for example, implemented on the token, and obviously the more ownership is given to the drivers, the more ownership is given to the users of the platform as well, and they have like an infinite options for gamification, for implementation of different things on the platform as well. There are different decentralized versions of different services like YouTube as well, like any type of services where you would need to buy like some kind of services like Fiverr or Upwork, for example. Like there are like platforms like that, copies of platforms like that being developed currently in a decentralized way, which would probably essentially like the first one who would be able to provide a nice and secure user experience. They would definitely get a huge share of the marketplace. from the current like platforms out there. And probably after that, these platforms, they will adopt this like Web3 part of the functionality. So it's really a huge thing. Even like a decentralized version of LinkedIn, we've been working on a couple of them through the whole like lifetime of the company. And yeah, it's basically like crazy types of implementations, and crazy how much power decentralization gives to the end user. And I think personally that's definitely like a next step of the evolution in terms of the products and in terms of the companies. It's ownership and value to the users, to the creators of value, and more open way of essentially iterating, improving the product, and handling the relationship between the parties inside different ecosystems. All right, so that's pretty much it in terms of the webinar and my presentation. I think we will move closer to the Q&A session currently. I might stop sharing on Zoom just to see the questions that are essentially coming. And yeah, I will start answering the ones that are on the live stream from LinkedIn and the ones in Zoom as well. All right, the first one, I see it's on Zoom. It's, hi Stan, thank you for the speech, welcome. I wonder what is your background, where did you gain initial experience? Yeah, so as mentioned at the start, I've started initially, oh, I actually can see the comments. All right. Yeah, so I've started initially as iOS software engineer in the first place, and then obviously through working on the company and through scaling the company pretty fast, I've been on the calls and I've talked through thousands of different ideas of like different products, and I was working on hundreds of them and seeing like the cycle from scratch, basically all the time, like from like concepts to working on the tech specifications, working on basically discovery, marketing, design, development, launch of the product. So it's essentially a very, very huge data to analyze. And essentially, we as a company, we iterate and work from our end on this data to make sure that the process that we have inside the company, they specifically provide the most amount of value to the people that we are serving to our clients. What is your professional goal for this year? So yeah, we essentially want to sustain the growth of the company, reach 3x as well, 3x in terms of our growth. We're changing some things inside the company, changing the models of how we work, kind of copying some stuff from the larger players on the marketplace that are doing like the similar thing. Yeah, and we definitely would want to get a bit deeper into like Web3 space and blockchain space. We have a range of products that we're working currently there as well. I think it's around 20 projects at this moment. But we're definitely looking to extend the list of clients, list of products that we're working on, and definitely not only being engineers there, but coming as a partners on each and every product that we are working on. And what is the most challenging case you have ever had? So I would say like you always would find issues and problems on many products that you're working on. It's just that like as you work on them, like you face the similar things and you learn how to improve and essentially how to work on them and how to become better at essentially what you do. The most challenging things, yeah, I think it's just like typical situations like with the deadlines, managing expectations of the clients, trying to keep things in one place, and when like there is a lot of pressure, you have to work like all the time with no sleep and everything. So yeah, I think these type of episodes, they're definitely interesting since you learn a lot, but they're also pretty stressful. But stress is obviously something that just pushes ourselves as human beings to perform. Do you follow Agile approach for projects? So it depends on the client and the project. So we are working on the product from scratch, and we have the full team that essentially we're providing for the product, which are usually project manager, business analyst, UI and UX designer, solutions architect, engineers, and QA people. We are always working on the Agile methodology. So it's never fixed priced. It's never something else. They're just something how we've built process inside the company and how we are providing the most amount of value. And we just pick the clients that would get the most value out of the out of something like that. All right, what is your opinion about the future applications of Web3 and semantic web in education? So that one is actually pretty interesting. Thank you for the question. So with applications of Web3 and in the education space, so the obvious thing is to think about the decentralization of the whole thing. I would say that like the current education system is a bit outdated, and with education, I would probably look more into the capabilities of the metaverse. Since obviously with the like pandemic and everything, I don't want to be like a negative person or something like that, but I think it's a pretty huge chance that something like that might be happening pretty soon, just because of the population of Earth is pretty pretty large right now, and it's just like a high probability chance that something like this might be happening. So I think that like options with the metaverse where people can socialize by basically not leaving the homes, and like the amount of gamification you can code with the functionalities with the smart contracts, and like you can essentially gamify the whole education experience. And I think like the best teachers, the best universities, the best professors out there, they're doing it anyway. But within like software systems and the code, you can really essentially systemize the whole thing, and you can really provide a very, very high level of engagement from the like to the students. So I think it's a very, very huge thing. And obviously with like we essentially we're working on a range of the products in AR and VR in education. And like they are teaching people how to work on like plants and factories through these simulations in AR, or they're providing essentially high cost chemical labs to the schools and universities in the regions that essentially won't be able to afford them in the other way. So it's a huge value already. And I think within the connection of these to the metaverse and within the connection of Web3 and blockchain space, it definitely could be improved. And I definitely see metaverse as the next step of evolution of AR and VR things. What is your personal advice for IT companies in 2022? If it's the question that's connected to a recession and everything, it's just my personal opinion. I'm not a huge believer into that. I think we had same kind of thoughts on the market when the COVID started. And that example of the company reaching 400 million euro valuation in 1 year is essentially the example of the company that took advantage of everyone else like being in fear, and they saw the opportunity of the marketplace, which unfortunate events like pandemic opened, and essentially it is like a delivery service. So they've done it at that time. They've done it better than everyone else in their region at that time. And I think things like that would always open up as well. So just pivot, work, and yeah, understand clearly like what they're going for essentially. Why should I hire a development team rather than experts one by one for projects? So this question, I think it's not clear a bit. Let me think on that for a moment. Yeah, so I think it's either like a huge, like a whole development team, then just basically like a group of freelancers that never worked with each other before and try to manage them. So with the team, you obviously have certain advantages. Usually people in the team, they would know how to work with each other. They would know how to communicate. They would know how to solve problems. They would know the working process right away. So it's way less micromanagement in the first place, which obviously shifts your focus and time frame from that, because you don't have to worry about that. You just have less stress right away. And you can focus on things that might be more important for the business, like marketing and fundraising or things like that. I think often hiring a team of like just freelancers might be like cheaper from the money point of view, but I think from the business point of view, it's a huge gamble, since you might essentially have people who won't like to work with each other. You might have people who argue. You might have people who have different work processes, who have different architecture of the product, who might have different code styles and everything. So it might not be like something very beneficial on the long term. So I would say it's definitely better to hire someone who worked with each other before. In the company, they would often have the same culture, same set of values. In the company, there would be HR processes that take care of things that in other case you would probably be taken care of from your end, and often like from the end of the client, of the customer, of the business owner, of the product owner. You really do not want to take on all of these things on. Yeah, I think it was a clear answer to the question. So yeah, from my end, I don't see any more questions. So yeah, I think we can essentially wrap this up. Thanks everyone for joining. We will send the webinar and essentially the recording, the presentation to emails of everyone who attended and LinkedIn accounts as well. And I also have a meeting link to schedule. We essentially would be offering a free consultation on your product idea, whether it's the mobile development from scratch, whether it's a Web3 product from scratch, whether it's the transition of Web2 business to Web3, whether it's basically just a team augmentation services and you just need to extend your current development team with the engineers as well. So we would be sharing the link on the resources as well. I've just sent it on the chat via Zoom. I think someone from the team would share it on LinkedIn as well. Thanks everyone for joining. I think we'll be wrapping up at this stage. Feel free to reach out to the email or LinkedIn. And if you would have any questions, feel free to reach out as well. Thank you and have a nice end of the day. Bye-bye.